What can a madman teach us about advertising? Quite a bit, if that madman is Jerry Fletcher. Jerry helps consultants, coaches, and independent professionals build their brand. He earned his spurs, to use his phrase, on Madison Avenue back in the day, working for some of the largest agencies in the world, like J. Walter Thompson and Campbell Mithun. Now, some of those agencies may have been gobbled up by the holding company behemoths, but many of the lessons learned in the age of Don Draper are still quite relevant today. In fact, we may need some of those lessons now more than ever. Take new business, for instance. We have complicated the hell out of a process that at its core is about relationships and helping people. Jerry has mastered that art and shares his perspective during the show. Or how about training? You know that thing where you take people who don't know things and help them learn those things so they can be better at their jobs? Jerry remembers when that was baked into the culture of every agency. Now, the only training you get is how to work the printer that's always out of ink and requires a 37-digit passcode just to get your faded comps. Oh, we also talked about trust. Yes, trust in advertising or in brand building more broadly. How critical it is, how lacking it seems to be, and how unsurprising that is in an industry where a third of the people turn over every year. It's tough to trust people you barely know. We dug into all of this and more during our conversation. Jerry has a knack for breaking stuff down in a way that makes it super clear and super actionable. Take a listen. You won't be mad that you did. Okay, Jerry Fletcher, welcome to the DesuckifyWork Podcast.
Thank you for having me, I hope. I'm not sure.
That's good. It's good energy, come in with a little bit of uncertainty. That's okay. Well, first things first, since people may, be unsure of who you are and what you're doing in the world, I'd love to give you a chance to just tell your story real quick. What do you do for work and how did you come to be doing it?
The short answer on that is I got fired.
Got it.
No, I was the CEO of a B2B advertising agency, and basically my board and I agreed to disagree. They wanted to go north. I'm in Portland, Oregon, and I said, no, south is where the market is. And so we agreed to part ways. That was in 1990, and I hung out my shingle as a consultant, and I've been doing it ever since. Basically, the best way to put it is if you're looking for information about brand, I'm a pretty solid place to visit. Basically, I know how to do the messaging that can separate almost any consultant or coach from the pack. And that's what I do.
That sounds pretty good. And you've been doing that since you mentioned, you got fired, and I think I remember reading on your site that was quite a little while ago, and it was your own agency, right?
Actually, I had been brought in as a senior executive and to expand the business, which I did.
Okay.
I was the CEO. I actually put the agency through what do they call it? An ESOP, an employee stock option purchase. So, and it was mine. But I was not the founder. I was just one of the three guys that ran it.
Got it. Okay. Well, as we, the name of the show is DesuckifyWork, and one thing I always kind of like to know is based on where your fingers are on the pulse and what you're seeing and experiencing from your clients. What's your take on the state of work right now?
Oh man, the state of work is messed up. That's the only way I can describe it.
Yeah.
There's a combination of things going on, which I think is probably something we're going to see over the next 10 years. And that is there's a real difference in the way people think about work in terms of age brackets.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm an old guy. Okay. I've been around since forever. As somebody said, older than whale dung. Anyway, the fact is that I think in a way about work that most young people don't. They're looking for satisfaction and I'm looking for just something to work on. And there's a real difference there.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm finding is that there is less of an urgency to earn your spurs. I guess that's the only way I can say it. Good friend of mine who was a client, ran a world-class direct marketing organization. The way he used to put it when he was interviewing someone was, okay, how'd you win your spurs? Who'd you work for? Because literally, as you well know, in this creative end of the business, it's what you know, not who you know, and it's where did you learn it and how well did you learn it? And so I see a great deal of difficulties there. It's amazing to me. I try to meet with younger people all the time, and I one young fellow who's running an agency that is primarily digital in nature. At one point, he said, "So what's your background?" And I said, "Well, have you ever seen the show on TV called Mad Men?" He went, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, it's absolutely true." And he said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, that's where I earned my spurs. I was working at J. Walter Thompson, New York, in that era. And I got to tell you, it's right on. There's no question about it." Yeah. I mean, and later I learned that the writers had taken a great deal of time to make sure that even the weather that they talked about in each one of those shows was accurate.
Oh, that's awesome.
But the attitudes is what I was talking about. And let me tell you, a completely bizarre, place to be. But at the same time, it was right when the whole agency world was shifting to a smaller agency model, to more creativity being essential. I mean, probably one of the best campaigns ever that came out of that time frame was for the Volkswagen Bug.
Yeah,
incredible work.
Yeah,
incredible work.
People still talk about it today because of that, I think. Yeah,
and so that's kind of where my background is, and so I grew up in that world. Then I moved to Minneapolis and worked my way through an agency there. And when it was sold to a British conglomerate, I was one of, I guess, 12 or 14 of us that left. Out of that 12, 10 became CEOs or COOs of agencies. 2 became executive vice presidents. Essentially, we left where we were at Campbell Mithun and went to across the country. We were all over the place.
Yeah.
And I wound up becoming a CEO of the largest B2B here in Portland, Oregon. And with clients like, let's see, what would be fun? Well, Tektronix, Intel, folks like that.
Nice.
So very big, very powerful clients, Freightliner, So I kind of have my seasoning, I'll put it that way, in that era.
Yeah.
So that's enough about me. What more would you like to know?
Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, you talk about kind of that mentality of kind of like come up, earn your spurs. Where did you learn and all that? And I do see a distinction. I think for me, when I was coming up, there was definitely still some of that. And I still see it in the sense that there are certain places, certainly as, I come up on the creative side, where if you work at one of the big creatively recognized places like Wieden and Kennedy or Chiat/Day or a handful of others that, Drogify in more recent times, there was Crispin Porter for a while there. Like there were where it's like, that was still a sense of sort of earning your spurs, earning your stripes. I think the amount of time expected there has gone down quite a bit, meaning you'll see people spend a couple of years at a hot shop, and if they produce something big, meaning a Super Bowl spot, or just something that got a lot of play, they can sort of write their ticket and suddenly, kind of jump the line a little bit and go from, I was a junior writer at, Wyden for a few years, and then they become maybe an associate creative director somewhere else and double their salary, and then they're on the move. Whereas I think right now, I think part of it is certainly in advertising, there's many more places for people who want the sort of creative experience to go, right? Once upon a time, I think advertising was kind of your one corporate-ish job that invited you to be creative and now there's so many tech companies and all these other spaces that are offering some of that if you're not giving me the opportunity to move up and get more of what I want quickly, you probably could get that at a startup where they're going to just pile on all kinds of responsibility for you. So I think agencies struggle with how to navigate that because their structure is not necessarily built to take somebody and immediately ramp them up the line, but there's a lot of competition.
But one of the things that happened, and this happened, oh God, I got to say back in the 70s or 80s,
mm-hmm.
advertising agencies stopped training people.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It just stopped, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky. When I was coming up, every Wednesday at J. Walter Thompson, New York, the major theater was opened up to anybody that wanted to come. And literally, you could learn about any part of the agency business, how it worked, what it did. You were there.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I was a lowly guy working in the arts area, in a pay stub room, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I made friends that were executive vice presidents and vice presidents, and I learned a lot about the business from them that I would never have learned otherwise. And then when I moved to Minneapolis, it was an agency that was noted for its ability to get to the essence of what was really needed and then develop it.
Yeah.
So I was, continually learning. And the other thing that happened was I was asked to contribute as I learned things and figured out how to do things. I was asked to write, manuals and that sort of thing, which doesn't happen today. Literally, I know a number of young men and young women who run agencies in town here, and they're more concerned just with trying to keep people on board, much less train them.
Yeah, I think the pace of things has scared a lot of agencies. I think and therefore the thought of pausing for even a beat to train some people, even though they know long term that's obviously a good thing, they think it's not worth it. Plus, half these people might leave anyway because turnover is 33% a year in this industry. I think the clients' expectations are a bit different, and the budgets, right? I think when you were coming up there, certainly in the Mad Men days, there was the media model, right? The commission model that provided a very stable and projectable sense of where you were. And now with kind of the billable hours model, and even that gets so squeezed now that I think agencies go, I both can't afford to train my people, and I have to ram so much work through this system to get paid that I can't have somebody sitting, every Wednesday in some room just learning stuff. I need them working on stuff, and hopefully they'll figure it out. I don't think it's good, but I think that's where we're at.
What that was an extended lunch hour. It was an hour and a half. Lunch.
Yeah.
So, there wasn't time that we were billing. I'll put it that way.
No.
But the whole idea of billing your time is I'm going to call it antiquated. That's the only way I can describe it. As a consultant, I work with a lot of consultants and a lot of coaches and folks like that. And the one thing I always basically force them to look at is, how are you going to get paid? Are you going to bill for your time? That limits the amount, there's only so many hours in the day. There's only so much time you can do.
Yeah.
There are other models we can use. And the basic model that I recommend is a retainer, just like a lawyer gets a retainer.
Yeah.
Now, and some people find that hard to sell. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you are really working with a client, you're working for them all the time. It's like the idea you have in the shower. How do you build that? if you're on a hour model,
Yeah.
And I can recall, well, a perfect example of this. There was an organization that started up. 14 people walked out of Intel at the same time, right? And so our executive committee met and said, okay, how are we going to chase this one? And we agreed we were not going to chase it because this was a high-tech company and we were the premier high-tech agency in town, right? And so I said, okay, let's just do this. Let's just congratulate them, take them some flowers. Okay, fine. So I go out with a big, huge bouquet, and I walk in, and the gal who is on the front desk is the former HR person for Intel, right? And I'm like, hey, how's it going? What's going on? Just wanted to say, congratulations. We are not going to bother you. Everybody and their mother is going to be pounding on your doors, trying to get your business. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
Congrats. We'll see you, right?
Yep.
I think it was like 6 weeks later, my phone rang. Can you come out and talk to us? Well, sure, be glad to do that. So I took my creative director and one of the founders of the agency, and we went out. I had a great conversation with them and trying to understand what they were doing. And then that the next morning, I'm in the room with the creative director, who happened to be a writer, and the founder, one of the founders of the agency, comes and he said, hey, I had an idea. I said, what's your idea? And he pulled out a white envelope that he had found in his car. He had sketched out what he wanted to do on this envelope, right? Okay. And he said, here's what I'm thinking, right? And Brian said, well, I could write something for that. And I said, yeah, can you do it quick? He said, yeah, I'll just do the headlines. And Frank said, well, I have to do a layout. I went, no, give me the envelope. Took the envelope, 1-page copy, headlines, right? And basically that was the beginning of a brochure that explained the company and what they were doing. And the headline on the cover of it, very beautiful brochure, was The Soul of the Machine. And literally, it won every award you can imagine. But more importantly, when I went out and presented that, here I am presenting to Casey Powell was one of the founders of the company. And I'm saying, here's what we're suggesting. It's just a way to get the word out there about what you do. And literally, it was over. It wasn't a question of contracts or anything else. It was like, you guys get us. The whole thing with a lot of the youngsters today is they sort of get it, but they're not quite sure. That scares the hell out of me. I wish there was a simple answer to that. I think my general take, and this may be true outside of advertising, but in advertising, often we almost kind of like flip the rule that you're supposed to spend like 80% of your time on the 20% most important stuff, or whatever that rule is. It's like we spend 80%, 20%, like 80% of our time on 80% of the stuff that means nothing. Like there's so much like chasing stuff versus the simple thing that happened in that car ride, right? The combination of thought and pondering and a little bit of conversation to kind of like suss out a thought and then go, oh yeah, I sketched a thing. Like there's less and less time for that and more time for what to me can feel like a lot of busy work, a lot of process, a lot of trying to just do something to look like you've done something rather than, whittle it down to do that one thing that is what really lands. I think some of the best places are still finding a way to do that because there's, this is a theme that will show up in this conversation a little bit. They have the trust of their clients. I mean, I think if you walk into Wyden, you already know what they've delivered and what they can deliver. So I think you may be willing to give them a little bit more room to go, this is how we need to do it. Where you walk into most of the sort of middle range shops and it's like, I don't know if I can trust you to do that. So I just need you to show me something every day, Well, obviously I come from the town where Wyden and Kennedy was founded, right? Yeah. They started by stealing 2 of my people.
Oh,
They
geez.
stole a media director and they stole a production manager, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And we were B2B, they were B2C. So, it wasn't much of a conflict there.
Right.
But the funniest thing that ever happened to me was, my secretary put a call through to me one day, and I can't remember whether it was Ron, or I don't know whether it was Wyden or Kennedy. It doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
And he was saying, hey, I need to ask you a favor. And I said, sure, what do you need? Right. You've already stolen my people. What more do you need? Right.
Mm-hmm.
This is a couple of years later.
Yeah.
And he said, my daughter wants to go into advertising. Would you talk to her and convince her not to do that?
Yeah.
I said, mission accepted. Let me see what I could do. Right.
Sure.
Well, needless to say, she was not going to get a job in Dad's place. Right.
Mm-hmm.
She wound up working in Chicago and became a pretty good advertising person. But
Yeah.
just to know that no matter how good the operation is, you really don't want your kids to get into it. That happens, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of that going on right now with people. Think about this. When you were coming up, nobody ever mentioned digital to you.
Right.
There wasn't a digital anything, right? And you had to learn about that over time. Well, now there are a whole lot of youngsters out there that understand the digital world, but don't understand where all the other possibilities come from. The whole advertising model in the digital world comes from the world before.
Right.
And knowing and understanding that's important, and understanding how to use it. It's like, again, I work primarily with consultants and independent professionals, I'll put it that way, because they need a different brand of getting at things. And one of the things they need to understand is that networking is possibly the most important piece of their business. That if you don't get referrals, you're not getting business. And if you don't keep people happy, you're not getting referrals. And oh, by the way, you can go speak about it till it freezes over and draw a lot of attention. But if you can't do the job, you're not going to get the business. And so it's a whole different model. And one of the things I've found with agents, advertising agents in particular, is they don't know how to go after new business anymore. They don't know how to do it. It's like, well, we'll just use our awards. Excuse me? That was a bad excuse before.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can recall one young man had a solid little agency doing great work for utilities. Okay. And I said, so you understand utilities? And he said, yeah. And I said, so how many of them do you work for? And he went, well, one. And I said, now, wait a minute. They don't compete territorially, geographically, and they all do the same thing. Yeah. And I said, so why aren't you talking to more of them? And he's one. Do you ever see the lights go on in somebody's eyes?
Yeah.
And it was like he looked across the table at me and went, damn, not a bad idea. I must have seen him 5 years later. I said, so how's it going? He said, well, we now have utilities in 16 states.
Yeah.
He's doing very well, thank you. But the key here is stepping back and looking at it and saying, okay, what works in this business with what's available, which is a difficult animal.
Yeah. What are agencies doing wrong right now, do you think, beyond the trying to just lean on their awards? Is there anything else? Are they
they're trying to lean on their awards? I think
in front of them?
They're way too digitally oriented. Now I know that sounds goofy, but
right.
I mean they've got to cover that base. But when you think about it, how long does it take to generate real awareness? Okay. That old term.
Yeah.
To build a real awareness about a brand, okay, with what's available in terms of digital media or social media, if you prefer that term.
Yeah.
Okay. I can tell you, based on my own research, that you can't do it in less than 6 months. You're probably going to be better off looking at it for a year, but you can't do it at all if you can't be distinctive. You can't be different.
Yeah.
And one of the problems with most of the clients out there is they don't want to be different enough to stand out from the crowd. Okay?
Yeah.
And even if they've got great advice, it's difficult. I mean, I was on the phone with a client this morning, and he's doing a speech in Mexico in a couple of days. And wonderful for him, he speaks Spanish and English.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
I have no doubt he's going to do well. I mean, I've seen the pitch. I know what's going to happen in it.
Mm-hmm.
But what we were talking about is, okay, how do you go from there to getting the business? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that piece. I mean, even if you speak well, there are people who are going to come up and want to talk to you, want to know more about it. But how do you go from there to getting their business and getting it on a retainer basis and staying with them and doing good work?
Yeah.
How do you do it? And that's the single biggest problem with most agencies today. They don't know how to get new business. They don't know how to, they depend on awards too much, or they depend on, well, we know everything there is possible to know about the digital world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but what do you know about running an ad in a magazine? Can you write me a newspaper ad?
Mm-hmm.
Can you do a personal ad for me? Hello. How do I get PR in a magazine like Business Week? How are they? They don't know. They flat don't know.
Mm. So the approach, I know, you work with a lot of independent professionals, and there's a few things that you lean into there. And I want to talk about that. And then maybe we can come back and see if some of what you're doing there can be leveraged for those folks who are running ad agencies, which is a slightly different animal, but maybe the principles apply. So you talk a lot about trust-based brand messaging. It sounds sort of intuitive, but from your perspective, what makes that trust so critical?
I'm going to tell you a story that I use many times when I'm speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I'd finished a morning presentation for a friend. It going very, very well. He was happy. I was happy. We decided to have lunch. So we went down the hill to a little Chinese place, right? Mm-hmm. And we're sitting there, having a nice meal. And then at the end, the fortune cookies came, right? Mm-hmm. And my fortune cookie, I read it and I said, the wise man knows everything. The shrewd one, everyone. And my buddy leaned over across the table, pulled his glasses down his nose, looked at me and said, that's true as far as it goes. I said, what do you mean? He said, if you're going to be successful in business, it's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who trusts you. Okay? Mm-hmm. That's how important it is. Now, everybody's heard the statement, people do business with folks they know, like, and trust.
Yep.
Guess what? Know and like is just on your way to build a relationship to get to trust. Okay. Mm-hmm. So back to your question about, agencies.
Yeah.
How do you get to trust? Okay. The assumption has always been, well, look at our awards. Mm-hmm. Wrong. Better to have an ongoing working relationship with someone, to at least have them know who you are. Mm-hmm. Make sure that you're differentiated. God, I hate that word. Okay. Positioned, branded, whatever you want to call it, in a different way. So, as goofy as it sounds, I just was doing a blog about this. One of the ways you can be different is to look different. Mm-hmm. I can never forget going to my first NSA, National Speakers Association meeting, and I'm sitting back in the, been away in the room, and this woman comes in with this unbelievably wild hat, right? Yeah. And every time there was a major session, she'd have a different hat. I'm going, and I finally turned to a friend of mine and I said, who the hell is that? Well, her name happened to be Patricia Fripp. She is one of the most celebrated speakers around. Okay.
Nice.
Does all kinds of corporate stuff now. And is now a friend of mine. I bailed her out of a couple of situations anyway. But that simple idea of just wearing a hat. Yeah. There must have been 40% of the people in the room were women. Only one was wearing a hat.
Yeah.
Okay. This Van Dyke, if I shaved this off, my own daughter wouldn't recognize me.
Yeah, I get that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I also know a guy who was a salesman who wore a Homburg when they were totally out of style. Everybody remembered him. Yeah. Everybody. Okay. So there's ways to separate yourself visually. Okay. Yeah. You can also separate yourself verbally. What you say and how you say it makes a difference. there's all kinds of ways to do it. But again, if I were, and it happens on occasion, I try to avoid it. But if I were giving advice to someone in the agency business, the first thing I would do is say, okay, what's your brand? I mean, think about it. These are people that are supposed to know and understand this stuff.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Hello.
This is the biggest. I think this is one of the biggest challenges in the business is how poorly agencies brand themselves and how deprioritized it can be. I think about, working on the agency website project gets kicked down and down and down the road and down the road. And suddenly it's 6 years old and your website that wasn't that good to begin with now is out of date and it still says nothing. There's no urgency around recognizing how important your own branding is and how remarkably commoditized it feels if you just randomly pick 10 agency websites.
Yeah, it's easy. It's the shoemaker's children every time. Yeah. Okay. But, and I can give you an answer on this because I've actually done this. No matter what the level of the agency is, that pushing things down happens. And the reason it happens is it's like, oh, that's not, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I can't waste my time on that. I've got to get this stuff done for the clients. Everything's for the clients, right? Yeah. The solution is you hire a consultant who will not let you do that. I have been that consultant. Yeah. Okay. And I'm literally, I have sat with agency founders and said, what the hell do you mean? This is who we are. Right. Everybody should know that. Why should I give a rat's? Right. And I think the best demonstration of it I've ever had was I was traveling with the president of a world-class direct marketing firm. And I said, okay, so you guys think you're so good. Tell you what, there's a phone. Pick it up and call your company, okay? But don't tell them who you are. See what happens. You would not believe how things changed after that. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Because very simply, when you call into a company, what are they going to say to you? I mean, literally, that first voice you hear if you're a potential client, what are they going to say? What do they sound like? How do they deal with you? Yeah. What do they tell you? Okay. And it's, it just flat amazed them that nobody, you call in and there was nothing there. It was like, well, yeah, we'll have somebody get back to you. Hang in there. Bye. God.
Well, I think when you hear that, when you see the lack of differentiation, to use that word again, it strikes me as not all that surprising that there seems to be a bit of a trust void in the world of advertising and in the world of agency client relationships, right? I think those relationships can often be strangely antagonistic instead of kind of rooted in collaboration and trust.
Well, if somebody says to you, trust me, what's your immediate reaction?
Yeah, I definitely don't.
Okay. So how do you get to trust without saying, trust me? Okay. And you have to prove what you can and do. Okay. And one of the things that most agencies don't do that they should do is maintain, I'm not going to call them testimonials. That's not the right word. Testimonials are important. They're handy, but they should maintain before and after information for every client. Okay. So it's okay. We went to work with, East Podunk Junction Airways. Okay. And this is what their advertising looked like before, or this is what their website looked like before. And this is what it looked like after. Okay. Now, here's the difference between the two. This website was generating about 3 folks coming in a day. This one was getting 17 a day. Now, it doesn't look like a big number, but when you consider this is a tiny little airline in the middle of nowhere, right? It's not a bad difference. But more importantly, the 3 that were coming in there weren't doing anything. Out of the 17, they were actually booking flights 12 of them were booking flights. Hello. Okay. That's a real difference. And you can see what's happening. The difference in the websites is this. Notice how we've changed the copy so that it deals with their interest. The person's interest is coming in rather than what we do.
Yeah.
See the difference? Okay. We want to do the same thing for you. Okay. So where are you now? And you gather that data.
Yeah.
And as you gather the data, you say, well, that's a pretty good thing you got going on there. That response that somebody gave to your customer service inquiries that was pretty nifty. We might be able to use that. Okay.
Yeah.
And you have to understand, I sort through all kinds of material when I'm working with a client, and I have found statements that lead to positioning that totally sets people apart. They become singular because of something one of their clients said, which is fine. Or something that they said in terms of how they look at a process or a situation differently. And one of my clients right now is a supply chain guy, right? But his difference is he says, look, supply chain is going to be there. Manufacturing is going to be there. And everybody keeps telling you how to save money doing it. I'm going to tell you how to make money doing it, because I believe that the supply chain should generate cash for your company. Now, do you want to talk to that guy?
It seems like a no-brainer. Yeah,
exactly. And we've done some other things for him as well. I mean, we do a thing called At the Whiteboard, because at one point he was going to do a speech. And I said, so Frank, how do you want to do this? I'll be happy to help you with the slides. And he said, I really hate doing those slides. I went, really? Okay, so what would you rather do? He said, well, I'd rather do what I normally do when I'm out talking to people. And I said, what's that? He said, I'd say, could I use your whiteboard? Okay. He said, I carry around, some colored markers.
Yeah.
And I said, so what do you do? And he said, well, let me give you a demonstration. And he did. We did the speech on the whiteboard. He now does a series, and once a week At the Whiteboard appears, and he talks about something in the supply chain and how to make cash from that. Okay.
Yeah.
Very powerful. And the interesting thing is, I've done similar things for other clients. One of them is now retired, basically said, if we hadn't done that series on how people, want to know about the myths of leadership, nobody would have known me.
Yeah.
So everybody knows about that. So I go back to, how do you generate the trust? One of the ways is before and after. That's one way. Okay. Another way is how you ask questions. It's like, okay, when somebody, how can I say this? And just say it. When somebody comes in for that initial interview, a potential client, how you ask the questions tells them a whole lot about how you think and what you do and why you do that. Okay. But in addition to showing them how you think, you need to tell them how you think. So when you ask a question, it's like, okay, so how have your sales been this year? Are they up, down? Are they the same? How's it compare? You get an answer. And then the next thing you say is, okay, how would you like them to have been?
Right.
What would you have done differently that would help that happen? Okay. And all of a sudden, you're having a business conversation, not an advertising conversation.
Yeah. I feel like if you talk to a lot of people in the business, they want to have those conversations, but don't necessarily feel, and this is the sort of chicken or egg thing about trust sometimes, they don't feel like the client wants them to come in on that conversation because I hired you to do my ads, you're my ad guy. And you almost have to, I think, do some of what you're talking about, which is find a way to demonstrate a little taste of that conversation for people, even if it wasn't initially what they asked for.
Well,
I want more of it.
There's another thing that agencies today are not inclined to do, but they should.
Yeah.
They need to be able to say to someone who is a potential client, look, you're obviously not thinking the same way we are. This is not going to work. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. But goodbye.
Yeah.
Okay? most of them don't have the cojones to do that. I'll put it that way.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you can imagine, I'm not even going to tell that story. I shouldn't. But I have literally, for a major client, which will remain nameless, dropped a telephone book in the middle of a table with one of the senior managers of the organization and said, we could tell you all about all the stuff in this book, but it wouldn't make a damn bit of difference to you because you don't care. You cared about where your business was going. You would answer our questions. You'd work with us, and you'd stop telling us what to do and ask us how we can help.
Yeah.
Right? And it was one of those. Right?
Yeah. I feel like this is a tough thing because I get it. You know, you're talking about the money coming into your shop, and it's in a short-term way of thinking. Okay, I'm giving up money. Now, I clearly am aligned with you. Long term, you're going to set yourself up for much better income in the future because you're going to have people you're going to attract the people who are willing to show up and be the kind of clients you want them to be. But there's that fear that shows up, and there's just a sense of like, I feel like people. It's almost like if one person did it, and like if we just got a little momentum, you could see a shift. But it's like everybody presumes I'm going to be the only one doing this thing, and therefore I'm just going to give away all my business if it doesn't align. And meanwhile, everyone else is going to snatch it up. It's this very short term mindset. When you talk to people, you have a lot of great stories, and I love that. Like, is there anything is there a way you can help people see like the folly in I need to cling to this short-term misfit account, even though it may cause internal damage, all kinds of things, turnover. What can you do to help people see that and trust that things will actually work out better if they take that drop the phone book stand?
There are two pieces that you're dealing with there. You're dealing with trust within the employee group. Okay. You're dealing with trust with the client. Okay. Yeah. In order to build the trust within the employees, you literally have to you got to have their back. Okay. The senior officer has to have their back. Okay. Yeah. And that means the senior officer and the team. So if that is a first year account manager, he or she has to have their back. Okay. If there is, and Wyden's pretty smart about this, by the way, because they have strategic people that work on multiple accounts, and they're not the account person. I'll put it that way. Yeah. They are the strategy person. So they're separated a little bit. And what they do, and again, I've talked with them about this, what they do is they make sure that they maintain contacts at that senior management level within an organization and with the people that are, doing the face-to-face all the time. They're in both places, okay? And by maintaining that agreement, that working with the senior people, you get a much stronger connection. I'll put it that way. Yeah. So that how do I say this? When you look at that situation, you can actually formalize it. One of the things that I did, which I learned, I think in Minneapolis, but I'm not sure, was to put together a situation where someone, senior on the account or not even on the account, would go out and interview the senior people and the people that you worked with on that account and come back with that information about what was doing well, what was not going well, and so on. And that would be the basis of how you developed your approach to that client for the next year. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So asking questions, finding out what their needs are, what their problems are, what their observations are, can be another way to start to build that trust. Yeah. And that's hard on the front end when it's a potential new client, when it's like you haven't had any meetings with them. But how do I say this? You should have had some meetings with them before they're in the room, in that conference room, trying to figure out where to go from here, to give you a brief, for want of better terms. Yeah. The thing that I found, particularly after I started my own consulting business, was that you need to be out there all the time networking. And literally about 3 times a week, I would have breakfast in a place nearby where I lived. Well, I happened to live in one of those bedroom communities where all the senior officers lived, and a lot of them would have breakfast there. I literally could not walk across the room that had maybe 20, 30 tables without having people stop me and say, hey, can you call me not tomorrow? I need to talk to you about. Right? Yeah. And once you hit that point, then it's easy to have the conversations beforehand and to begin to establish some level of trust. I mean, I can recall one gentleman saying, so, okay, I'd like to have you go to work for the company, but, we've been with this agency for the last 20 years, and I don't think it would be a good thing. I said, don't worry about it. Yeah. You got a question I can answer. I'll be happy to help you. The thing is, make sure that you talk to them about it as well. Now, what did I just do? I just made myself much more trustworthy, and much more easy to talk to. Okay, it's a matter of you got to be on all the time. You got to be going for, I'm going to call it credibility. Okay, because one of the things I say all the time is credibility leads to cash. If you're credible, if you're a great resource, if I can ask you a question and not worry about it, if I know that you're not going to talk all around town about me, then I'm comfortable. And it gets interesting. I mean, after a while, I've never forgotten. I was at American, what do you call it? A big technical organization meeting. And I'm standing there having a cocktail, right? And I hear a voice behind me and say, my God, they'll let anybody in here. Right? It was the CEO of a client.
Oh, nice.
Oh, good to see you. How's it going? Right. Yeah. But the thing is, you have to be on all the time. And if you're talking new business, one of the problems with new business is the people that do new business, regardless of what kind of organization it is, they have a tendency to not be able to explain how they do it. Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing, and I'm going to use lawyers as an example here because everybody understands lawyers. Yeah. One of the situations I had was a young lady who basically was following my advice to do some networking and so on, but she worked for a law firm. She was beginning to get clobbered by one of the partners, the managing partner, because she was showing up late. In other words, she wasn't there at 7:00 in the morning. Right. She was having breakfast with potential clients, okay? Or she was having lunch, or she was having dinner. She was out working it, right? Yeah. And finally, he came to me and said, look, I mean, what can I do with her? She's just, and I said, has she brought any business in? He went, well, yeah. I said, how did she get that? He said, well, I don't know. I said, that's because you don't do new business. The guy in your company who does new business is, because I knew who it was. I said, what you got now is you've got a younger person doing it. They'll get the clients he can't get to. Oh. And he said, well, but how do I account for it? It's all ours. I went, you got to find a way. And let me put it this way. If you don't accept those clients she's finding and you don't get good billing on them, guess who's going to have them? And it won't be you. So the whole thing is changing the attitude of the new business person to establish the idea that your situation is to find people, build relationships with them, whether they're a new potential client or not. Build the relationships. They'll refer you. They'll talk about you. They'll talk about your organization. And if you let them know what you've done before and after again, then all of a sudden people will be out there talking about what you're doing. Awards, let me tell you, there is no law firm in the country that gives a rap about advertising awards.
Right.
They wouldn't know one if they ran up and smacked them in the chops.
Yeah.
So.
No, I get it. I think, all of what you're saying totally makes sense to me. And I think what I'd be curious to hear from people who watch and or listen to this, who work particularly in the advertising space, but anywhere really, is, what's keeping them from following some of these methods of kind of foundational stuff networking, building relationships, therefore building trust. What's blocking that from happening for people? My hunch is there's probably a handful of answers, some of which is rooted in the sort of agency new business process at the big level. There's a lot of this procurement stuff, and there's consultants who help, but it creates this process that's mainly like get as many people in there as possible for a pitch, spend like hundreds of thousands of dollars creating new work, for at best like 10% chance of winning it. And on some level, I get it. You're like, ooh, I'm going to go after, Coca-Cola, whoever. Like, I get why you do it. But on the other hand, I sit here and I think it seems a lot more sensible to me to be spending time getting to know people who have decision-making power, building relationships, being the person that they might call on the phone, even when you're not a client, to just go like, is my agency, are they crazy or are they onto something with this idea? And you just answer honestly. I think that's actually pretty smart. I would go down that road. So I think there's a number of things blocking that. I don't want to speculate too much, but I'm curious. It's something I might want to like poke around with when this gets out into the world of what's keeping that from happening. Because
I can tell you a few things. How do I say this? Younger people are not oriented to in-person networking. Number one. Number two, they are not comfortable establishing the relationships that are necessary and maintaining them. They just don't want to maintain them. Okay. And the third piece, which is probably the most important one, is advertising agencies say, hey, we can help you find the right customers and sell them. Okay. Okay. So who's your right customer? Tell me who it is that you would like to work with in this market or in this world or wherever. I don't care where it is, but tell me who it is. Now, do you have the cojones to figure out what they need, what desire, what will convince them to even talk to you? Okay? Do you have the ability to reach out to them and say, look, we're trying to figure out how we want to present ourselves to clients or companies like yours. What is it that you're looking for? Okay? To ask the question. And I will guarantee you that probably 80% of the folks that are out there that are bemoaning the fact that they aren't getting new business never ask that question.
No, I think you're probably right. And I think it's this weird cycle of that continues, which I think is the way we get new business is either by winning awards and or by going into these, free for all pitches where we strut our stuff and we hopefully get them excited about us for that 40-minute meeting. And then maybe we win the business for a year or two until they go do it again. Versus what I would say is simpler approach that you're talking about, but it does require commitment that it shows up very differently to me, to commit to an ongoing process of curiosity and, being inquisitive with as many people as you can be and being as useful to as many people as you can be, even when that instance may not result in dollars in your hand, right? And playing a little bit of that longer game, I think, for whatever reason, people have been convinced that game doesn't work anymore. And I think I'm with you. I think that's nonsense. I don't think that's true. But I think people then come into the agency and go, well, this is just the way we do it. What we do is every 6 months, we're putting together another 200-page PowerPoint deck with 6 new campaigns for some crazy client. And at best, we may make it to the final round of 4 and probably not get it. And meanwhile, we're out a few $million every year. So,
well, one of my credos, and I've worked with agencies and direct marketing firms and PR firms and so on. I try not to anymore, quite truthfully. It's a pain where a pill won't reach. Anyway, one of my credos is this: never, ever respond to an RFP. Do not do that.
Yeah.
Step away from the RFP. I don't care how far you step, go away.
Yeah.
And I literally have had, you would not believe some of the folks that have asked me this question. It's like, well, why would we do that?
Yeah.
And I say, and my answer is always the same. Have you ever helped a client develop an RFP? Yeah. And when you help them develop it, there were specific things within that RFP that really pointed to the agencies or whoever they were interested in, right? Right. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, so why, when somebody throws up an RFP that you're responding to, don't you see that? Hello? Yeah. Walk away from the RFP.
Yeah. I've seen a handful of folks do that, and they're usually happy for it. But again, I think it's this mind virus that tells us like that's the way you do it. You chase and you chase and you chase, and hopefully you grab you scrape one or two every couple of years, and that's what it looks like. I can't think of a reason.
I can recall literally hurtling down a mountain after we landed in I can't remember the name of the town in Colombia, with Don Peppers and I in the same car, right? Okay. Don was a new business guy. So was I. We literally had crossed paths so many times and didn't know it. It was scary. Yeah. So here we are hurtling down this mountain talking about, hey, did you do that pitch? Yeah, I did that pitch. What did you think? And by the time we got done comparing notes, what it came down to was we were always more successful when we weren't doing RFPs, when we weren't chasing business that was sort of up for grabs, but rather working the longer idea of how do we meet the right people, or working a situation where we'd met somebody somewhere and then later on they called and said, hey, could you come talk to me? Yeah. Those are the most wonderful words in the world. Hi. I've got a couple of questions. Could you come talk to me? Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of good stuff happening here that I'm hopeful that some agency folks will listen to, and I hope it sparks some discussion. It's a combination of, starting with the idea of trust. How do you establish that? Getting people to know you and then like you and then trust you. How do you get clear on why they should trust you? Meaning, what is it you do and how do you do it in a way that's different? And then ultimately, how do you keep that going? How do you keep those relationships going? Another thing that you do, and I want to lean into this a little bit. I think it's semi-connected because I actually think agencies could learn from this exercise. But the YOS, which is how we got to know each other. I know you work with it a lot with your independent, business clients. And what is it that you learn and that your clients or prospective clients learn by taking the YOS? And for those who are listening, it's not called an assessment, but it's very similar to an assessment in that you answer questions and it tells you, your why, your how, and your what.
Let me make one correction there. It is not an assessment. It's a discovery. Okay. And because it allows you to see those three elements, okay. Simon Sinek did a wonderful thing on this that introduced people to the idea of why being the most important thing, how kind of tagging along, and what being the problem we all have. Because when somebody says to you, the most popular question in North America is, what do you do?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the most important piece of information that they're looking for is, why do you do it?
Yeah.
So using a YOS, how do I do it? Basically, if someone wants to talk to me about doing business, I say, let me just give you this free discovery and you learn a little bit about yourself, and it'll make it a little bit easier for us to, be able to communicate. And the reality is that once somebody takes a YOS, they understand their purpose in life better than they ever have in the past. It's that simple.
Yep.
Okay. And so I can talk to someone and understand where they're coming from. I happen to be, my why is better way, my how is make sense, and my what is trust. So for me, anytime someone comes up with a problem, I'm looking for a solution. And one of the hard things for a person like me to learn is that sometimes you don't need a new solution. You just use an old one, or you use the one you got and don't stop trying to fix it. Okay. The second piece of that, the how, the make sense, it allows me to communicate with people in a way that they can understand complex kinds of things. And I can explain, particularly like in the advertising world. I mean, if we start with awareness and we wind up with repeat, hello, what's in between?
Yeah.
So the key here is the YOS gives you the ability to understand your own purpose in life. I mean, and there's some people like me that are not very good at navel gazing. I'm sorry, I'm just not.
Yeah.
And I took this because I have been looking for a solution that helps me understand branding and where people are coming from for a long time. This is one of the simplest answers to that I've ever seen. It doesn't completely tell me how to talk. How can I put this? How to do advertising to a specific person. But if I know what their why is, then I know I can communicate with them based on what that why is. If I'm part of a team, it helps me, again, communicate better. It helps me trust my team members because I know where they're coming from and I know where they're going. It's one of the most powerful tools I have ever seen, and I've been doing this for a lot of years. I mean, I'm well over the 80 mark, so I know what I'm talking about here. I got into it because I was looking for a way to be more explanatory with brand, and it helps with that because it allows you to brand yourself in a way that magnetically attracts people like you or that can work with you, which is a big thing. I mean, there are folks out there, I'm going to use an example here, that we call right ways, okay? These are people that have a process and they're going to do it that way, and that's the only way to do it, and you better not, don't stray, okay? But you know what? I want an accountant that's a right way. Thank you very much.
Generally speaking, that's a good idea. Yeah.
So the real element there is what makes it work. The thing is that it is a tool to help you find a way to get to trust more quickly by understanding the people that you're talking to. Very powerful.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was curious when you said that you're a better way makes sense, and then trust is your what, because your whole brand is kind of built around trust, right? Yes. So that's what you deliver ultimately is. Right. So I'm a make sense, better way, contribute. So a few of the same recipe items in there, but in a little bit different order, and I land on contribute, and it definitely clicked for me. As soon as I got make sense, I was like, all I ever do is see things and try to figure them out. That's what actually attracted me to advertising and creativity. It's like, you give me a brief and now I get to just spend time cracking that brief, figuring it out, making sense of it. And then hopefully coming up with a better way to do something. And then ultimately, hopefully that makes an impact, right? I mean, that's the contribution. Sure. But I when I look at this, the YOS, I've done it with teams, and it's really cool, I think, from a communication standpoint, to be like, oh, I'm maybe butting heads with this person because they're a right way and I'm a better way. And I'm constantly trying to think of a new thing to do, and they're saying you're messing with a perfect system.
Yeah, we got it figured out. We don't need anything new. Thank you very much. The other thing that's fun about that with teams, and I don't know whether you were in the training last week, whatever, but basically the founder of the Y Institute was talking about how when he put the matrix up, team, that was the thing that got through to CEOs, COOs, all kinds of senior people were going, I get it. I can use that, right? They came out of their seats for the matrix.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, it's like, oh, okay. And it spelled out what the people in the matrix were, and basically the question that was asked is, okay, who's in the wrong position? Well, it was somebody who was I can't remember I think it was a mastery or a contribute who was the accountant. Wrong. You don't want somebody that's looking for great new ideas. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I get that. But it's really helpful. It's helpful in that, right? You immediately kind of go, okay, few things need to move. And then it's also really like, who do I talk to when I need this kind of a brain? When I need a better way brain who's just going to feed me new ways of thinking about something. All right, I'm going to come talk to Jerry. Jerry's going to have loads of new ideas. But then, when it's like, all right, I have this thing, I got a structure around it, but I don't know how to implement it. Maybe that right way person can start to come in and go, great, I can figure out how to turn that into a repeatable process that you might be comfortable with. So it's really eye-opening. And it then got me thinking, part of this conversation even opened this up, the building of trust and the connections that happen when you're networking with people, and even as you are in this new business phase. And it's like, okay, I want to talk to you about how I might, solve some problems for your business. If I know your why, and perhaps the leadership team, whoever's showing up to that initial meeting, how different might that be than going in and doing it the way you either guess that they might want, or probably more likely doing it the way you like, right? I'm going to do a presentation that's all lined up around make sense because that's how I operate. And then I got a bunch of, contributes across the table from me going, I don't know where this guy's coming from.
Exactly.
I feel like there's so much value in implementing that.
So now you know why when someone comes to me and wants to hire me as a consultant, one of my first things I do is say, look, I've got this tool that I use that might make it a little easier for both of us, and explain a little bit about it and say, it only takes 8 to 10 minutes. And, we'll be able to talk to one another on a little bit better level. It'll help you figure out your own relationships. And, it can be used for working with teams and so on, but let's just talk about what it can do for you.
Yeah.
Right? And I give them a free one, and off they go, right? And I have the information sent out, and then I say, let's talk about it, right? Well, all of a sudden, again, people like me who are not navel gazers, they get it back and they go, damn, that's me.
Yeah.
How, what? And it's just wonderful, okay? Because you can say, I'm just like you. I have difficulty figuring this stuff out. Somebody, you put me in a shrink's office and I'm not going to do very well at all. Feelings? I don't know how to explain that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of insight from this tool, this discovery tool. And I think, when you talked about trust and, coming all the way back to just that question about the state of work and people feeling like things are kind of funky. And I think there is a bit of a trust vacuum right now. Companies don't trust people coming in. People coming in don't necessarily trust the companies that they have the best interest. There's a lot of institutional distrust. Not saying that this is a panacea, but anything, and the YOS I think is just a good example of it, that can invite people to get to know and understand who's they're sitting across from every day a little bit better. It at least opens the door to get you one step closer to trust, which I do think if you want to have a successful business, whether you're a solopreneur or you run a 1,000-person ad agency, you need that. We're lacking that. So I'm all about anyway, all the ways you've talked about before, if there are certain tools that can help people get there, I think it's so needed right now. And I'm hopeful, but I'm curious what your take is when you think about, the state of work and, are you optimistic that things can get better even though they are pretty funky right now?
I'm the eternal optimist. So my answer is it will get better. Yeah. I think it will get better. How do I say this? Most people believe that things aren't as good now as they were when they were at, okay.
Yeah.
Make America great again. Well,
sure.
Okay. It depends on how you think about it.
Exactly.
But the reality is that over time we learn. As individuals, we learn. As organizations, we learn. And there are organizations that are really showing prowess in making it all work better. Okay. And that's going to continue to go on. Now, will we have, how can I put it, confluences of the people that are doing it better in one place or another? When that happens, it's magic.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's when new organizations get formed. I mean, I got to give Wieden and Kennedy credit. When they figured out what to do with Nike, and they said, okay, can and literally I have friends that started with them. And believe me, it wasn't a picnic. But they worked hard at trying to find ways to separate themselves and to always, always, always home in on the strategy, not only from the standpoint of what they could do, but how the customer thought about the product.
Yeah.
And that simple idea is so amazing, because most folks starting ad agencies are not that hard over on that. They're saying, okay, we're going to sell them something. No, you're not. Okay? Basically, what you're going to do is provide the information that will convince them that they ought to buy. And there's a whole big difference there.
Yeah, I think you could probably do a whole separate episode on just that distinction, because I do think that's a challenge for a lot of folks. I want to get into one thing that I think is somewhat related to this question about optimism and a lot of what we've talked about. But if you had the power to sort of wave a magic wand and make the world of work look like sort of this ideal state, this desuckified state, what does that look like?
What would I do if I had the magic wand? I think if I could wave a magic wand, what I would do is, I don't know how to say this, do something to the frontal lobe of all those people that believe that they are entitled and that they don't need to work to understand how to make something work. That if I could get them to just get to the point of saying, I don't know, but I really want to learn, and I'm going to do everything I can to do it. I want that person.
Yeah.
Okay? And then on the other side of that, the people that are employing people need to understand that the reasons they do what they do in terms of a job versus what these new young people are doing and why they're doing it are totally different. So stop telling me what you want and listen to those younger people and try to find a way to match up with their needs and concerns. The one thing that almost every young person I've ever talked to says is that they want to feel like they actually make a difference.
Yeah.
How hard is that?
Yeah. It's funny because I think in many ways the second half of your magic wand equation will, I think, start to light up that frontal lobe of all those people who are coming in and wondering, if they should be patient as they learn and kind of earn their way through. If they knew, and I think this is true, I'm 53 and I still need that. Like if I work for myself now, but even that, I have that conversation with myself. What am I ultimately trying to do, and how can I best make an impact at what I do? But if I showed up at a company tomorrow and you can't somehow connect the dots for me between okay, you're going to come in and run our creative department. Great. But what are we really trying to do here? What is the work that I'm doing? What is the ultimate impact it has? I will become a much more patient person. I will become a much more trusting person. I will become, my commitment level immediately goes up. I'm starting to think long-term about you as an employer, because it's like, ooh, you're seeing me and you're recognizing that I have something more to offer than creating an ad, that I'm helping you build something. And if you can do that, and if you can create that kind of conversation with more people, I think it goes a long way. And I think it's not hard. Like you said, it's just pausing for a beat and having that conversation early on when people are interviewing, and then when they start, here's why what you do makes a difference here, and here's why it makes a difference if you can do it better. And by the way, maybe I'm going to actually help you do it better if we could get to an even more ideal state, So
I think one of the best questions I was ever asked by a young person joining the firm was, what do you want me to be like? And I went, I think there's a one-word answer: patient. I want you to want to get further than you already are, and I want you to want that all the time. I want you to be unhappy with the fact that you don't know all the answers, and you need to have somebody you can talk to get them. I need you to be impatient. Because they are impatient right now, but they're impatient with this idea of I need to get great new salary. I need to have this title. I need to have all these things. Okay, I need to be considered this way. Well, I'll be happy to consider all those things for you if you're impatient.
Yeah, it's an interesting twist, right? It's a totally different application of that impatience into a more fruitful place. And the word that shows up for me also in correlation with that is curiosity, just like insatiable curiosity, where it's just like, I'm very aware that I don't know a lot of things. And again, this shows up for me at my age all the time, maybe even more so now. And I'm excited to figure out how to know those things wherever I can learn that. And as companies, the more you can just point people, if at the very least point people to where they can know them. And if you can then have some kind of structures for training or coaching or whatever that helps people get to that information faster, then that impatience gets rewarded, a little more quickly. I think, I want to wrap us up. I know we've been going for quite a while here, and it's been really fun. And the way I wrap this up, which I think I told you ahead of time, is I use sound effects on my show. That's one of my little signature items. Lots of cat sounds and some other goofy stuff. Are you open to making a sound that can be included in your intro and outro?
I love the comment that you made when I said, okay, fine. My sound effect is ARG.
I love it. Yeah, that was your response, right? When I asked you for a sound effect. Now I got to have a sound effect. Arrgh! There it is.
There you go.
I love it. Well, that's also the sound effect of maybe somebody impatient who wants to know more and is ready to go forward and is frustrated maybe that they're not getting the information they need.
It's the sound of someone who is asked to, be a consultant.
Yeah.
But to do it without any information.
Yes.
What should I do about this? What's the problem? Well,
Yeah, I unfortunately have experienced that situation many times, and I wish my language was as gentle as ARG in those moments.
Well, let me say that's a carefully considered way to put it.
I get it. It.
Well, turn the recording off.
Well, I want to quickly, before we go, though, just give people a chance to know how to find you. How do we track you down?
JerryFletcher.com. That's
JerryFletcher.com.
Right. That's my primary website.
Okay.
That will get you to my speaking website as well.
Awesome.
It's got all the products and everything on it at this point, everything that goes on. And, I'm always open to, right now I've got room for maybe one or two regular clients.
Okay.
I don't, at my age, I have no idea of why anybody would have more than 5 or 6 clients.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think I think that would make a lot of sense. I hope somebody tracks you down through this, because I think, you're a very smart guy who's got a lot of learning from a lot of the different experiences you've had. And you've got this just sort of boundless energy that comes forth through all of it.
The thing that's nice these days is because, I'm branded as doing messaging, which is fine. Mm-hmm. the key thing there is that I keep getting these weird little assignments, like the homepage of my website doesn't seem to be working. Oh, okay, I can fix that.
Sure.
Or could you rewrite this ad that doesn't seem to be, generating any interest or whatever? I mean, I keep getting these weird little assignments because of my background with, advertising, direct marketing, PR. I mean, all these things kind of play into it. And I literally have situations where I can just sit there and go, well, the reason it's not working is the headline is screwed. I mean, who wrote this piece of crap? Yeah, well, you can't say that, but
no, I get
it. Known to do it.
Well, let's get people going to jerryfletcher.com. I would also recommend they, maybe follow you on LinkedIn too. You post some good stuff there as well. Jerry, this has been really awesome. I appreciate you taking the time, sharing some good nuggets that I think people can wrap their head around. I'd love to see some advertising folks, get curious.
Well, I'll be happy to talk to them. How do I say this?
Yeah.
I don't particularly like working with advertising folks for the reason that I did, run agencies. I've done all this stuff. I'm really familiar with the business. Yeah. And so I get extremely frustrated because they don't understand the basics of new business development. They just don't get it.
No, so. I hear you. Well, I think if they at least get curious about wanting to think about it and wonder if there's a better way out there, that'd be a good start. All right, Jerry. Well, I appreciate it. And we'll just say goodbye here to everyone who's listening and watching. Goodbye.
See you later.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to the DesuckifyWork Podcast. And thanks to Jerry for bringing wisdom, insight, and clarity to the show. You can follow Jerry on LinkedIn and check out his site at jerryfletcher.com, where he breaks down the keys to brand building in simple, concrete steps. Speaking of concrete, my website is also pretty solid. You should check it out. And if you want a more solid understanding of your business or career, let's set up a free 30-minute What the Heck is Coaching All About call. Do me a solid and have a great day, everyone. Bye.